This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America. It just might be the greatest sports franchise in the history of sports. A place where legends are made, and there's always something to talk about. Get ready to immerse yourself in pinstripes. Start Spreading the News, hosted by Paul Semendinger and E.J. Fagan, a couple of doctors with a prescription for Yankee fever. And now, here's Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan. Get ready to start spreading the news.
Yes, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Paul Semendinger and Dr. E.J. Fagan, the Start Spreading the News Yankee show. Dr. E.J., haven't seen you in a couple weeks. How are you?
Doing well. How was Disney World?
Disney World was great, E.J. I was just showing you before the show. I ran a whole bunch of races. They have this thing called the Dopey Challenge, and if you run a 5K on Thursday, a 10K on Saturday, a half marathon, a 10K on Friday, a half marathon on Saturday, and the marathon on Sunday, you get a Dopey medal. That means you are dopey because you ran 48.6 miles. So that's my medal, my Dopey Challenge medal, and I'm wearing the Dopey Challenge shirt, my Mickey Mouse running shirt, my running hat, and it was great. In the meantime...
Paul, yeah. I don't know if we ever talked about this. Did you ever watch the guy who ran from the southern point of Africa to the northern point of Africa?
You told me about that on Netflix.
I think you would love. I think you would love. Man's a crazy person, but he did it, and he ran basically a marathon and a half every day for almost 2 years.
It's crazy.
Through some very sketchy territory, and now there's another guy. Some of his old team is on the same team. He's decided to do the ultimate triathlon. So he started somewhere in the UK. He swam across the channel. He is then biking to Mount Everest. And then he's biking to the foot to whatever, India. Then he's hiking to Mount Everest and then climbing Mount Everest. Insane person. He looks like he's in shape, so maybe he can do it. But I don't know. All you people who enjoy exercise are crazy. That's what I said.
Well, it was crazy. That's why they call it the Dopey Challenge. But it was awesome. And so we had a great time. We went through the parks. It was just my wife and I. And you know what? You go to Disney World and you're still a kid. So we did the Peter Pan ride and we did all the rides. But, like the Peter Pan ride is just a kid ride. And the Pooh Bear ride is just a kid ride. But it's fun. I love being a kid. I don't ever want to grow up, even though I'm getting old. So all good stuff.
Yeah, I can report that I'm in Chicago and it's cold. It's very, very cold. And whoever built my house decided that the only insulation they needed was brick. And so it is cold and I am freezing and I want to go back to Arizona, but I can't because I live in Chicago and this is the world I chose.
Well, EJ, if it's any consolation, I am at my son's house and my daughter-in-law's house with the babies, the little twins who will turn 8 months old in 2 days. And so we're helping watch the kids right now. And I'm in their basement and it's cold.
Yeah, it's cold in my basement. It's cold in your basement. It's going to snow in Louisiana tomorrow. So there we go. All right, let's talk about baseball, where pitchers and catchers report in 3.5 weeks.
3.5 weeks. And the Yankees, EJ, were so busy in the beginning of the offseason, and it's been more than a month or so. Are you frustrated or disappointed by the Yankees' inaction at this point?
No. Kind of for two reasons. One is there's not that much left to do, right? There's basically one player. Bringing a third baseman, it seems like they're exploring lots of third base options, and some of the higher priced ones are kind of playing chicken, right? So Alex Bregman hasn't signed anywhere. Ha-Seong Kim hasn't signed anywhere, and Lonel Arenado hasn't been traded. And so there's still like high-end options out there, and I think that's also holding up the low-end options. I remember when kind of all the first basemen signed within a day of each other. I think that's probably what's going to happen with all of these moves that we think are going to happen. That doesn't mean they're going to the Yankees, but I think that's very logical, very normal. And even if they do nothing, I think they're probably fine. They're not great, but they're fine. I think you're waiting on a relief pitcher. Maybe they're trying to trade Stroman, and there's a couple of small moves that have to be made. But the Yankees made a lot of moves. They made them early. I'm glad they made them early. That way they didn't string this offseason out, and you end up with players like missing part of spring training, like some of the players last year. So no, I'm okay. We had a long discussion on the Bronx Beat podcast yesterday about basically, are the Yankees the best in the American League? And like our conclusion was that there's really no one that we're concerned about. I mean, obviously weird things happen. Teams have breakouts, whatever. But if you just go down the list of American League teams, no one's gotten better. Maybe the Red Sox have gotten better, but they're coming off an 81 win season, so they've got a few wins better. No one's really out there threatening the Yankees as the favorites. And I think once we get, the PECOTA projections and we're going to talk about some other projections today. Once we get all of those in, once you start seeing like the betting lines and stuff, like I think the Yankees are going to be the easy favorites. Like I think it's going to be they're the favorites last year by all these systems. And I think it's going to be even clearer this year.
I think they're much improved. I am frustrated, I guess. I mean, that's an overstatement, but I would love them. My worry is this, that every year they've gone into the season with obvious holes. And it's one of those things where you're like, well, I know they're going to fix that. I know they're going to fix that. And then they don't. And boy, oh boy, this winter they had me believing, and they still do have me believing they're going to make the move to get the third baseman that they need, but they haven't. And maybe it's just the market's been very slow. That could be. But my worry is that we're going to go into the season and it's going to be some rotation of DJ LeMahieu, Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, and Yorbit Vivas or whatever. And you're like, that's what they're going with third base. They're doing it again. And when you look at the other coast, the Dodgers are, I think, signing everybody. I think everybody in the major leagues is now signed with the Dodgers. And why can't the Yankees just complete the roster?
I think I'm a little less concerned let me say it for a couple of reasons. I think the first one is that it's only one spot. Whereas in the past, it's been 2, 3, 4 spots where, you have to work on Aaron Hicks and Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and, whatever. And that turns out to be a problem, right? Turns out that you end up with not just an incomplete roster, but a roster with no depth. So once you take that, 2, 3 guys that you're not happy with, and then you let somebody get injured and you give Gleyber Torres a slump and you give Anthony Volpe a slump, and all of a sudden you have a very, very thin roster. I'm not as worried about this squad for a couple of reasons. One is there's not an obvious, there's really only one real obvious, this guy could be nothing candidate. That's Paul Goldschmidt, right? I think Goldschmidt's probably going to be fine, but there's a world where Goldschmidt has a hard fall this year. And then you have to worry about first base, but you got Ben Rice, right? Which is, as far as depth goes, isn't bad depth.
And Dominic Smith, which is kind of silly, but he's a solid major leaguer.
If he's your guy at AAA, I think that's fine, right? I think that's better depth than they've had at the position last year. And so there's something there. You don't have people playing out of position. So I'm looking at the 2023 roster right now, right? You had Oswaldo Cabrera in left field. You had
Isaiah Kiner-Falefa in center, no?
Isaiah Kiner-Falefa ended up playing a lot of center field. Jake Bowers was important to that team. Now, some of that was because guys got injured, but even then, they weren't starting.
Cordero and God.
But that was also a team that one of the reasons they ended up with a lot of those guys is they were depending on Anthony Rizzo to be really good. Anthony Rizzo got hurt in May with a concussion. DJ LeMahieu to be good. He was bad and injured for a lot of the early part of the season. Harrison Bader to be good and was bad. And I just I look at Bellinger and Chisholm and Dominguez and Goldschmidt. I just feel like the odds of any of those guys being awful is pretty low. I think the problem is that the upside isn't high either. Jazz was a 4-win player last year. Maybe you get that again. That was a lot of early home runs with the Yankees, and he kind of fell off late. Bellinger, you could see a world where he becomes his 2023 self, and then he was a 5-win player that year, even though if he was overperforming a little bit. You could see Wells, Dominguez, Volpe. Like there's a lot of optimism there, but I don't see a superstar out of it, and maybe Dominguez. Right, out of any of those guys. I don't think Goldschmidt's going to be an MVP candidate again. I think you're hoping for 2023 Goldschmidt. I think that, I don't think Stanton's going to bring back his playoff form. But then you look at the other lineups. This was the exercise we did. You look at the other lineups, and everybody's got a spot like that, or 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go on Spreaker and get that episode, and then we'll put it on the start spread of the news.
Yeah, the American, the one thing to remember about the American League, the Yankees won it. They had 94 wins. The second place team was the Orioles with 91, I believe, or 92. And the Orioles just lost their ace, Corbin Burns. They lost Anthony Santander to the Blue Jays just now. They didn't replace them, right? They got Felix Bautista coming back from injury, and that's about as far as they go in terms of replacing anybody. And so they're worse. That's a worse team than was on the field last year. Maybe Adley Rutschman doesn't have a bad second half, but they got a really good year out of some guys like Gunnar Henderson, Colton Cowser. There's a lot of room for the Orioles to fall. And I think that probably that's what we end up seeing, that they win fewer games next year than last year. And you can say that about a lot of teams, right? The Astros just lost Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker. That's huge. That's 10 wins right there to replace. Tell me about this with mathematics.
All right, the Yankees lost 8 wins with Juan Soto.
Yep.
But if you lose 5 wins and 5 wins, or even if it's 5 wins and 3 wins, if you want to make the numbers equal out, if you're losing 2 very good players, that sometimes hurts more than just losing 1. No,
it depends on who you replace them with, right? I don't know who the Astros are putting in place of Kyle Tucker. Presumably they have somebody who's better than replacement level, right? The Astros kind of did a thing that the Yankees did where they improved by addition by subtraction. They replaced just Jose Abreu's just awful performance at first base with a pretty good player in Christian Walker, 34-year-old player in Christian Walker, but a pretty good player in Christian Walker. They tried to replace Alex Bregman with Isaac Paredes. We'll see how that works out. Kyle Tucker, though, is just he's that good, right? He's hard to replace. He's like Soto that way. And this feels like a team on its last legs, the Astros. And you just kind of go around the league and you just don't see a lot of teams that are going to put another 10 wins up, right? Like the Royals, they won 86 games last year. And that was despite incredible pitching performances from Cole Ragans and Seth Lugo and Bobby Witt Jr. having one of the best modern seasons of all time. And, are those going to happen again? I wouldn't bet on it, right? I bet on Aaron Judge being really good again because he's done it basically 3 years in a row, not counting hitting a wall. And Bobby Witt Jr., maybe he's a 7-win player next year. Well, that's 3 wins worse than what he was, right? He could be third in MVP voting and lose wins for the Royals next year. You just go down the list of teams and it's not there. This is not the National League where the Giants added, the Mets added, the Cubs added, the Dodgers added everybody, the Padres, there's not a team that, not a league that is really being very competitive right now.
Well, listen, I hope you're right. I would love the Yankees just to ease the worry or the concern or the frustration and get Alex Bregman. Just do it once and for all. So tomorrow's the Hall of Fame big vote. Yep. I think it's probably certain that Ichiro's going in, maybe unanimously. I think CeCe's going in. It looks like Billy Wagner's going in. That might be the only 3. Is there anyone not going in who you feel is unjustifiably not going in 2020.
I mean, we've talked about the steroids guys to death, so I won't talk about
Right.
A-Rod and all that. Yeah, look, I think that, we've talked about Andy Pettit, where I think he's a clear Hall of Famer, but he's just not going to get there. I think Andrew Jones is
I was going to ask, that's the name.
It's a pretty easy pick. Like, I don't understand the problem for players, right? Like, is it because he had a kind of short career? Like, he was easily a Hall of Famer in his 20s. I remember, he had those like 2 seasons with the Yankees, and I remember like being like shocked that he retired. It's like, Andrew Jones is 34 years old and out of baseball. But it just was like and you could see with the Yankees, he kind of did the same thing Aaron Hicks did, which is like, he just kind of got fat and just stopped being able to play at the high level. But, if you just look at his numbers from, he came up so young, I'm looking at his age 21 season through age 29 season. I mean, he was incredible. Lots of MVP votes. He was one of the reasons why those Braves teams were so good. The Braves could pitch, but they also had Andrew Jones and Chipper Jones. Like, I think everybody watching him at the time thought he was a Hall of Famer. Maybe the defensive, the balance of his production at the time was defense, right? He was one of the best defenders in the world and hit some home runs, but that wasn't really anything special in the late 90s. He was a special defender. And I think we should recognize players like that. And I think that he's I don't think it's close. I don't see why it's an argument, but only 62% of voters said yes last year, and we'll see what they say this year.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I think that's 6:00 tomorrow. So let's go to the projections. I mentioned that Baseball Reference before the show began has given their projections. So I don't want to get into, the nuances of, well, they just averaged out the last 3 years or whatever, however they do it. All these projection systems are doing that to a certain extent. What I want to do, EJ, is I want to read you what they're saying. The players.
By the way, I brought up the Baseball Reference homepage, but there's something we didn't talk about. Another Hall of Famer, Bob Uecker, died.
Oh, Bob,
right?
Great. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
I mean, that's incredible. What an iconic player. We're talking about a guy who was iconic in the 90s when he was doing like just a bit outside for Major League, right? Like, that's incredible. And, rest in peace, Bob Uecker. That's a sad one. And he was calling games up until he couldn't call them anymore, right? I mean, he called the wild card games, I think, for Milwaukee. So, incredible.
Yeah, true baseball legend. If you ever have a chance, go on YouTube and find the episodes of the Johnny Carson show when Bob Uecker first started to become the personality that he was, a media personality and, a comedian to a certain extent. They're funny. You sit back and you watch Johnny Carson and Bob Uecker from the late 60s or early 70s or whenever those were filmed. And you just say, you know what, this guy, he was something else. He's funny, told great baseball stories. And, I remember his book, The Catcher in the Rye, WRY, was his book, I believe, and he was a terrible baseball player, but he was a great personality and a great announcer and a legend. And it's sad, when people like that pass. Absolutely. So
let me ask you a question. Do you think Michael Kay calls games till he's 90?
No.
I don't think so either. I think he's a little too high strung, but for someone my age, right? I mean, I'm almost 40, and Michael Kay has been the voice of the Yankees basically my entire living memory, either on radio or television. Right? I was in high school when he took over for the broadcast for Yes, and I think that's kind of special to have one guy for a long time for a fan base. I think they define the game as much as the players, as much as the uniform, the stadium. I think it's really special. I think Michael Kay is a really good broadcaster. So I don't know, but 90 seems a little long for me. He does not seem like the kind of guy who can kind of slowly fade away the way that some of these old guys do. I think Michael Kay is a little too intense for that.
Yeah, I loved Michael Kay when he was a newspaper reporter. I loved Michael Kay when he did color with John Sterling on the radio. I loved Michael Kay when he first had the Michael Kay show, which I think came on originally at 10 a.m. and it was like 10 to 12, or maybe it was like 1 to 3 before it went into like prime time. And unfortunately, something changed. I think Michael Kay calls a good game sometimes. And I think there's other times when, for whatever reason, the focus is less on the game and it's more on Michael Kay. And there are times when the calls feel like he spent all night writing them up so that he could have some type of cute saying rather than just calling a big moment.
He goes into the history. He pre-plans a little too much. I remember when Aaron Judge was getting close to 62. You know, I saw a lot of fun little jokes about, you know, exactly how, you know, how Michael Kay would, you know, how many middle names Michael Kay would name when he talked about Aaron Judge hitting the home run. But I just think on like a casual Thursday, I really enjoy watching him. And somebody who's been out of town for so long that I've had to watch a lot of other broadcasts. It could get worse. It could get real bad. I remember the worst I've ever seen was when I was living in Austin. And so when the Yankees played the Rangers, I had to watch the Texas Rangers broadcast. And that was like watching a bunch of amateurs, frankly, like, you know, interviewing the local car dealer kind of stuff in the middle of the game. So I'm thankful for the YES Network, and I'm very curious to see kind of how the Yankees, the YES and everybody navigate the coming kind of apocalypse of cable. And I hope Michael Kay, I think Michael Kay will probably be that guy for a while.
I think so. You know, his radio show has changed in New York. He's not doing it with Don LaGreca and Peter Rosenberg, I guess is the other guy. They're not doing it together anymore. Now it's a different show. I think the Michael Kay world right now is not as strong as it might have been 2 years ago. Center Stage hasn't been a thing since COVID.
I love Center Stage. I'll tell you.
I thought Center Stage was great. I loved his questions. I loved the rapid fire at the end where he would just ask, who do you want to be in a foxhole with? And just random stuff that wasn't your typical interview. Yeah. So there's a lot of good about Michael Kay. Here, I'll give you an example. When I was running these races in Disney World, you run through the parks. So that's really the highlight. So the races all start in Epcot. You run through Epcot, and then you run through the Magic Kingdom. But what people don't realize is the Magic Kingdom is about 5 miles away. So you leave Epcot, and you're basically on a highway. You're running on a highway for 5 miles, and if you're doing 10-minute miles, that's almost an hour. It's 50 minutes. If you're slower than that, it is an hour. If you're a little faster, it's a little less than an hour. So if you're running 9-minute miles, which is not that 45 minutes, it's a good long time you're on these roads. And then you leave the Magic Kingdom, and it's a good 6 or 7 miles till you get to like Animal Kingdom. And you're just on these roads, and they have these announcers. And they have characters along the way. And there's a lot of fun that they do, but they have certain announcers. And these two announcers, I don't know who they were. I never heard them before, but they were doing every race. Their voices were projected over speakers. And instead of saying stuff to motivate the runners, and saying stuff like, you guys look great. I'm so excited that there's so many people out there pushing themselves and giving it what they have. They kept talking about, we're moderately helpful. We are sort of really kind of moderate.
Yeah, it's the Gen Z humor. It's the kids' humor these days. I as a college professor,
all they could talk about was themselves.
Yeah, you know, the meta humor is I think a bit much. I think we all know the joke too much sometimes, and that's the style of the kids these days. But
and that's
you know,
Michael
Paul,
Kay sometimes.
I'm old. I feel old every time I teach college freshmen, and you're old. You're older. So unfortunately,
you want to hear a funny? I think I might have told you this already, but this was funny. In Ridgewood High School, they have this program to help the kids become better writers. Now, Ridgewood's like one of the top-ranked schools in New Jersey, as you know, one of the very best public school systems, one of the most prestigious public high schools. It's great. Ridgewood is Ridgewood. But some of the teachers came up with this idea of, instead of having the kids always writing 5-paragraph essays, to do this thing called One Good Paragraph, OGP. Like, let's focus, instead of length, let's get a short thing that's really high quality. let's really get a one good paragraph. And so I was watching a number of lessons when I was doing my interim work there this last fall, filling in as the supervisor of English. And then I brought that idea to my college class. And to introduce it, because I do get silly sometimes, I started playing the hit that you probably remember, OPP. You remember the song by Naughty by? You don't remember it either. This is really dating me. It was a rap song by Naughty by Nature.
Yeah, I know the song you're talking about.
Yeah. And I'm starting to play it. And the kids are all looking at me, and I'm like,
it's a very late '80s song, there, early '90s.
Yeah. And I'm like, you guys never heard this song. They're like, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh no! Oh, I remember. Just remember how old these kids are. I mean, especially when we talk about history and political events in my classes. Yeah, I always have to remember what's their memory. And it's very, very, it's much shorter than you would expect. I mean, something like a 9/11 is like Vietnam to me.
Yes.
Like legitimately, right? Like same time skip. And, that's just all getting old. I will say, Paul, this is completely off of the baseball, train. One good paragraph is such a great idea because we don't teach the paragraph, and the paragraph is the one unit of writing. When I teach writing, I teach writing to my undergrads, I teach writing to my grad students. I teach the paragraph, right? Because that is how you have to learn to write, one paragraph at a time. And a 5-paragraph essay is just stringing together 5 paragraphs.
And hopefully 5 good ones. But when you try to write a 5-paragraph essay, you don't write any good ones.
And frankly, a 200-page book is just stringing together 1 paragraph at a time. And I find that people just don't think that way. People have been taught to think too big, right? Think either in the sentence level or multiple pages at a time. And 1 paragraph is 1 discrete argument, and that's the way that you need to write it. And I plan my outline is my paragraphs, right? Every outline is the topic sentence of the paragraph, and that's how I write, and I think it's been very successful for me. So I think it's a great idea. By the way, I tell you, I never learned how to write a good 5-paragraph essay. I don't think I could like do anything like an essay till I did debate team in college, which really forces you to think that way. And I don't think I still don't think I could write a good 5-paragraph essay, right? Too much. But my blog posts are maybe they're kind of 5-paragraph essays.
Sometimes they're more to 5, and they're not complete paragraphs necessarily. But
no, because that's not how the internet works.
That's correct. That's not how I write either, but it's all good. So let's get into the Yankee stuff. Anyway, OPP, you know me. I could start rapping now or something like that. But it was so funny. The kids are all looking at me. I'm like, this song I thought was one that everybody knew, like YMCA. It transcends generations. Like, no, we have no idea what you're talking about.
Remember, that song predates me. Right? So Paul, where are these projections on Baseball Reference you want me to look at?
They're on each individual player page. So we're going to start with Paul Goldschmidt. And basically, I'm just going to tell you what they're saying. I'm going to give you the basic numbers, and you're going to tell me if he does this, will you be satisfied? That's the question. Okay. So 528 at-bats. That's pretty much a full season. 22 homers. A 259 batting average. 334 on base, 443 slugging, 778 OPS.
That's great. That's all I need. That's all I need, right? I don't need Paul Goldschmidt to be an MVP. I need a respectable first baseman. That batting line is better than anything Anthony Rizzo did as a Yankee. Like, I think we have very rose-colored glasses in Anthony Rizzo, and I'm someone who thought he'd recover well from the concussion because he was fine before the concussion. But like Anthony Rizzo's career batting line as a Yankee is awful.
Yeah,
and
terrible.
A 778 OPS, that's better than we've gotten from that position in a very long time. Basically since like Mark Teixeira. I mean, like really, I can't remember
Mark Teixeira. Yeah.
I mean, Luke Voigt had like there was, consistent at least, right? Luke Voigt had that one season, that
was COVID year when he led the league in homers.
It's been a while. And I think that a 778 OPS
with great defense,
with good, I'm not gonna say great for Goldschmidt, but good enough to a 37-year-old's version of great defense. As a 37-year-old, I can tell you, I tweaked my knee walking down the stairs. Good version, good enough defense, 778 OPS. maybe a little better against lefties. So you can imagine sliding him up in the lineup against lefties. I'll take it. That's great. I take even a little worse than that, and I'd be okay with it.
All right, second base, Jazz Chisholm. I'm putting him at second because I still think or hope the Yankees are getting a third baseman. 549 at bats. Plate appearances, 496 at bats. He's going to score 70 runs. He's going to steal 31 bases, hit 23 home runs, bat 256, OBP 321, slugging 452, on base plus slugging 773.
That's a great player, right? I mean, especially if that comes with good defense. Right. Like if he's playing second base and he's playing, when he's played second base in the past, he's been a very good defender, Gold Glove level defender. His base running has always been a real advantage. I mean, he put in some serious base running runs last year, 31 stolen bases there. And these are numbers that are not a full season. So, this is assuming he pulls a hamstring or something and spends some time on the IL. You take those numbers, you turn it into a full season. That's 40 stolen bases, 30 home runs. I think it's really good. It's almost a little too optimistic, frankly. 773 OPS. I mean, Goldschmidt at that level is fine. Like Chisholm at that level is excellent because he does all the other stuff. If Chisholm does that, the Jazz Chisholm trade will go down as one of Brian Cashman's best trades.
And it's time for Brian Cashman to have a couple of those best trades in this.
He hasn't had a banger in a while. He had some back in the day, but it's been a minute since Brian Cashman had a trade that you go, the Yankees clearly were that was a steal. And if Chisholm has a 750 plus OPS next year and plays good defense and stays healthy, it's a steal.
All right. So how about Anthony Volpe? 551 at bats, 74 runs, 16 homers, 24 stolen bases, 240 batting average, 302 on base, 388 slugging, 691 OPS.
So I want better than this. Like if you tell me this or I roll the dice, I'll roll the dice. Because 691 OPS, like that's a little bit better than he did last year, right? He was a 657 last year. So that's assuming some improvement, which you would expect with someone his age. And that's what the Baseball Reference is doing. He's just adding an aging curve to what he's already done. I think that Volpe has another gear. And I think we've seen the worst case scenario, which was last year, and that was still fine. He was still a good enough player, because of defense and base running. I really liked what we saw in the playoffs. I decided to look the other day at his StatCast numbers in the playoffs and try to see what he was doing differently. And they were actually very similar. Like, for example, his swing length was exactly the same. But there were two things that were interesting. One is he swung harder. He swung considerably harder in the playoffs than he did during the regular season. It wasn't that he swung a little bit hard. He didn't have like two. We've talked about players having kind of two swings before, like a soft swing and a hard swing. That wasn't it. He just swung harder, right? Just all the time. And then he was more selective. He was better at taking pitches outside the zone. And the expected numbers basically looked at him as a really good player, like a player who should have an OPS well into the sevens. I don't know if that's what I expect, but I think I want his OPS to start with a 7. And so I think he can do better, and I would roll the dice on better than 691 OPS.
I'll tell you what strikes me on this too: 24 stolen bases. Yep. Really, I mean, if Anthony Volpe's only stealing 24 bases, there's something wrong.
I agree, and I think I think the reason why he was only at 28 last year or whatever,
28 and 24 the year before, but he's got to do more.
Yeah, I agree. Like I think the problem is he doesn't get on base enough. And so he doesn't have the opportunities. If he got on base at 320 clip or something, I think he could steal 40 easily. Right? He's got the speed. We talked when did we talk on the show when the new data came out? He has the best by far leads in baseball. He gets the farthest lead by a foot or two, and so he's not only as fast as Chisholm, but he gets the extra lead. And so I think Volpe has the potential to really be a terror in the base pass. The only reason he hasn't been is he's not on base. Can't steal first base. And I have some hope there. And I still think that there's a world where Volpe is a really special hitter. I don't know. Like I'll take okay. I'll take average. I think average, and he's an all-star. But I think that right now, we've seen the worst case scenario. I think there's another gear. I don't think it's necessarily him batting high in the lineup good. I think some other guys we can talk about have a better shot at that, but I do think that there's potential.
Now, at the end of each number, when they give these, I should also give you this. They have a reliability score, basically their definition. It shows how much the forecast is based on the player's performance and how much regression toward the mean. This only has a 28%. Jason Dominguez. I'm not going to give you the home runs and RBIs because it's so skewed.
Yeah.
But batting average 243, OBP 325, slugging 424, OPS 749 in his rookie year.
I don't hate it, right?
I
think that's a productive player. It's a rookie.
But it's not what we want.
He turns 22 next year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think this is the kind of projection that it's basically impossible to generate this way.
Yeah.
I mean, you really his season last year was weird in a way that a projection system really is no way to solve for, right? He starts off with the Tommy John surgery. He's brought back as essentially, playing at AAA as a rehab start, basically. Has a slow start, heats up, gets ready to get called up to the majors, gets injured, comes back, slow start, heats up, and then gets called up for an insignificant amount of time. I think that we smart, educated baseball fans, hopefully, coaches and other people do this professionally, can look at that batting line and be like, Dominguez has potential, right? Like, this is a guy who could hit 300 easily in the majors. He's gone through stretches where he's hit 350, long stretches where he's hit 350 plus at AAA, both in 2023 and 2024. And I don't think there's any reason to think he's injury prone, right? The Tommy John surgery was a thing. And then, he pulled a hamstring. That happens. Came back pretty quickly from that, actually. And so this is a guy who turns 22 next week, I believe, or in 2 weeks. Think about what some other top prospects were doing at 22. I mean, he could be in college still. So I think that I get you take a prospect who can play defense and give him a 740 OPS. That's a major league player. That's a good major league player. I think that he has room to grow. So do I roll the dice? Yeah. I think if you told me it's either that or I roll the dice, I'll take my chances. But that's not bad, honestly. Like that's a 3+ win player right there in his rookie year, right? He has room to grow after his rookie year. Still a guy who hasn't seen a ton of at-bats in the last 2 years because of injuries and some weird stuff. I think in 2023 he actually got a decent amount, basically a full minor league season. He just had to be promoted. So it's an interesting projection. I'll say that.
I'm hoping for more. I mean, that's sort of one of the Yankee.
I think there's a world where Dominguez is your leadoff hitter on May 1st and deserves it, right? And is good at it.
Here's Cody Bellinger, 489 at bats. I think that's low. 20 homers, 262, 26.2, basically. That's my favorite number, a marathon distance. OBP 320, slugging 444, OPS 764.
Yeah, it's not a great projection. I think that's the reality of Cody Bellinger, right? I think that's what he basically was last year. He's 29 years old. You can look at his 2023 line and hope and say, maybe he's a guy who can slug 500 again. But then you look at his, years before that when he was one of the worst hitters in baseball for a couple of years. And so I think, it's kind of averaging a lot of that together. I look at the reliability score. It says 85%. That seems high to me. I think Bellinger's more volatile than that. I think he does have another gear. I think there's a world where Yankee Stadium is really friendly to Bellinger. I also think that, look, if he has a 764 OPS and plays good defense, again, that's a well above average major league player, right? The average major league hitter is not nearly a 764 OPS at the moment.
And we were talking earlier about what happens if Goldschmidt, is terrible. You do have Bellinger as your first baseman option as well.
I mean, yeah. Do you want to guess the average batting line for a major league player, an American League player last year? Batting average on base, slug. Because I really think you need that to contextualize these projections.
Yeah. All right. So a typical batting average batting average last year, I want to say 247, but I'm gonna bring that up a little bit because that seems awful low. So 254,
240.
even lower. How
That's
about
the
that?
average player, right? Average OBP 309. Average
That's
slug
terrible.
394. Now,
Not even
I mean,
400.
I talk about this on the show a lot. Like,
Yes, you do.
this is a problem. Like, this is a problem for Major League Baseball. That those numbers, I believe, are as low as any time. I think they might have been 2013, 2014. They got pretty low, but I think it's basically as low as any time since like the early 80s. I mean, it's bad. And so you talk about, hey, Cody Bellinger, would you take a 764 OPS? Well, that's a pretty good player, right? That's better than most major league players. Jason Dominguez, a 740 OPS, is better than average as a 22-year-old. I mean, one, that makes Aaron Judge's achievement incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. But it also puts like Anthony Volpe's performance in light, right? Like, that's not that much worse than the average player. And then he has some other things he brings to the table. So, like, I think we all have like a barometer in our heads from, basically from like 2004 to 2019, with a couple of years in there where offense dipped and we didn't really talk about it that much, where, an 800 OPS isn't extraordinary. It is today. It is extraordinary today because of how hard it is to hit.
Well, speaking of an 800 OPS, how about this guy? 488 at-bats, 100 runs, 46 homers, 10 stolen bases, only caught once, 99 walks, a 293 batting average, a 415 OBP, a 633 slugging, and an OPS of 1.048. Aaron Judge.
It's pretty good. Here's the thing. That's pretty good, and I feel like it's low. Right? I mean, I go, oh, Judge slugging 633, pshaw, right? Aaron Judge slugged 701 last year. He slugged 686 in 2022. And I think he was slugging about 690 when he hit the wall in 2023. It is weird to say, I think that Aaron Judge is a 10-win player, and I'm not even like concerned about it. Right? I think Aaron Judge can do a 1.1 OPS, and that wouldn't be incredible. He's an outlier. And the way I think I said it a few months ago, I think is still true. Like, you look at what Barry Bonds did when he took a bunch of steroids and got really strong and took all of his natural talent and then supersized and took all the wisdom he accumulated over the years. And in his late 30s was Babe Ruth, like straight up, like no qualifiers, did Babe Ruth stuff. Aaron Judge, instead of steroids, he just has his body, right? He just has Aaron Judge. And I think he's basically Barry Bonds. And I think that's pretty cool. I worry that I worry that he doesn't have the legendary, like, other skills of Barry Bonds, like eyesight, all that kind of, like, I feel like Aaron Judge has somehow put together without being as good as Barry Bonds. But like, I don't know if people thought Barry Bonds was a superhuman his entire life, right? I think he's just a really good baseball player. And I think Aaron Judge is that good. I projection systems have trouble with outliers. Like, the way we create these things, it really is not designed to have outliers. And Fangraphs put a new projection system out a few weeks ago called Oopsie. No real idea how it works or what it's designed for. But one of the things it did is it really it took some of those heavily regressed projections and kind of expanded them a little bit, gave them a little more variance. Whereas Judge under, I think, Steamer, which is the headline Fangraphs projection, is a 7-win player projected as. Oopsie said, maybe this guy really is an outlier, and said he's a 10-win player with a 660 slug, and just incredible. Here's the other crazy thing. Judge is going to be playing right field again. Maybe he gets a little less tired. Maybe his defense improves. And he goes from being a pretty strong negative defender last year to being a average or better right fielder. And that could mean a lot.
Means a lot. I think one of the things the Yankees have done, and we've talked about this as well, is they're a solid defensive ball club coming into the year. I mean, you haven't been able to say that about the Yankees for a long time.
And so this seems crazy to say, but I'll roll the dice on Judge, right? I don't want to settle just for a 1,000 OPS. Give me an 1100 OPS. Let's do it.
Nice. All right. How about this guy? 240 batting average, 319 OBP, 413 slugging, 732 OPS, 14 homers, 55 ribbies. Austin Wells.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? That sounds like a good catcher, right?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Right,
That
especially
one I
because we
like.
think he's a pretty good defender. He's turned out to be a solid defensive catcher, maybe a good defensive catcher. But I want to roll the dice, right? I think that Austin Wells. The thing that you have to remember about Austin Wells is that his entire career, he was a great hitter, and you wondered if he could catch. And all of the questions about Wells in the minors, as a college player, at the draft, before the beginning of this year, it was, well, he can hit, but does he have a position? And I think we have easily settled the question of, does he have a position? Yes, right? He is an excellent he's a good defensive catcher. Excellent framer, solid enough with the other parts of catching. Maybe when the robo umpires come, he becomes an average or worse defensive catcher. But for now, he's a really good player. And then you go, oh yeah, this guy can hit. This guy was a first round pick because he was a great hitter. And then you think about, okay, what did he do this season? And there was kind of like 3 stories of Austin Wells this season. First couple of months, he's playing part-time with Jose Trevino, and he's hitting the ball hard. Statcast thinks he's got some luck, some bad luck, and he's batting like, what was it, like 140? Right? He was awful. I'll actually bring up the game log right now just so I can do this with real numbers, right? So first 2 months of the season, he's got a 598 OPS, right? Bang 204. He's been awful, but we're all looking at the numbers going like, dude, he's kind of hitting the ball hard. Like, we can see it. It's coming. Aaron Boone said it's coming. Like, just be patient. It's not a large sample because he's splitting time with Trevino, kind of the backup catcher in a lot of ways. And then like he gets moved up to leadoff, right? Like that's the Yankees are just desperate for a leadoff hitter and or for a cleanup hitter. And you move him up the lineup, and when does that occur? That occurs, I guess he turns it around before then. So he hits his low point on June 1st. He has a couple of days off, and then from June 1st through the end of August, he is a 918 OPS hitter. Right? He is not just a good hitter for a catcher. He is one of the top 10 hitters in baseball for 3 months. He is the cleanup hitter. He is a great cleanup hitter. He is hitting balls in the gaps. He is punishing people for pitching around Soto and Judge. He looks like a real hitter. Like, his swing looks like a real hitter. He looks like the guy that everybody said he was in college. And then something happens in September. I think he just breaks down, right? Like, I think it happens to catchers. It happened to Adley Rutschman this year. Happened to Sal Perez. Like, catchers who play a lot break down. And I think Austin Wells is really good. I think Austin Wells has the potential to be an MVP. And everything that, this may be everything Jorge Posada was. Jorge Posada was a questionable defensive catcher who was an excellent hitter. And I think Austin Wells has the ability to be as good of a hitter as Posada. Maybe he probably won't be for as long. He probably won't be as good, but like, the potential is there. I want better than a 732 OPS. I think he's absolutely capable of that. I think that's his floor. And that's something that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I like the numbers as they stood. All right, here's our last one.
By the way, I think he could be your number 2 hitter. Like, I think you could see him hit in front of Judge. Or number 1. Like, or he's that good.
Yeah, I don't want to see him leading off. All right, here we go. Here's the craziest statistic of them all with these offensive projections on Baseball Reference. 422 at-bats, 26 homers, 216 batting average, only 43 walks, a 290 on-base percentage.
Can I guess?
Wait a minute. No, you already know who it is. 438 slugging, 728 OPS. But here is the craziest statistic in this whole exercise, and then you can tell me what you think about the whole package. 2 stolen bases.
Look, Giancarlo is he's nimble on his feet. Look, I have no idea what to expect of Stanton. That batting line's awful.
That's
Right.
terrible. If that's
Right.
the Giancarlo Stanton, we're in trouble.
Now, I will say it is an above average OPS. Now, it's above average because of slug, not on base, so it's probably a below average batting line. It is worse than he was last year, which you would expect. That's what Steamer's doing. He's expecting a 35-year-old to get worse. I don't think the playoffs were real, but I do think that he has something left more than that batting.
I agree. That cannot be what Giancarlo Stanton does.
Look, if his there's a world where Giancarlo Stanton's not a major league player. I mean, we talked about this last year, right? That Giancarlo Stanton could be cooked, could be done like DJ LeMahieu. And his season didn't go that way. He got better as the season went on. Like if I look at his splits right now, like he didn't get like playoff Stanton better until the playoffs. But he was as I'm waiting for this to load here. He was a let's see.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a quick commercial for whatever internet service you would like to put in.
Okay, he didn't get better as the season went on. That's interesting, right?
Yes.
He basically was a 700
5G
OPS
speeds.
guy the entire season. There was an injury in the middle there, but when he got back from injury, he was the same kind of guy. Look, I don't know. If I'm the Yankees, like I look at some of the DHs that they could have had, and they're better than Stanton. Like JD Martin, I'm not JD Martinez. Justin Turner would have been a better DH than Giancarlo Stanton. Some of the hitters that we talked about, like trying to think of some of the hitters that they could have signed. Like they could have had them. Like they could have had Anthony Santander as a DH. They could have had Teoscar Hernandez maybe as a DH. And instead they have Stanton. And it's one of the worst contracts in baseball. It is a problem. And look, they're going to hold out hope that they had playoff Stanton figures something out. But I just don't think he's 35 and giant and like has lost almost all of his physical skills. So like maybe that batting line is right. Like I feel it feels wrong. And whenever I hear like commentators talk about Stanton, I feel like I'm insane. Like I listen to people say, surefire Hall of Famer. Stan's going to the Hall of Fame. You got Soto, Judge, Stan, 3 Hall of Famers right there. And I'm just sitting here like, guys, like, look at the numbers. Giancarlo Stanton is not a good baseball player. He isn't a below average major league player. He hits, and when he hits, it is fun to watch, right? I love watching a hard hit Stanton home run. That is cool. No one else in baseball can do it like him. Now that we have the swing numbers, we know that he has a unique swing. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't help you win baseball games, right? What matters are the results. And when Stan doesn't hit the ball a mile, he doesn't hit the ball. And he doesn't run the bases. And he doesn't play any defense. The numbers are clear to me. He is not a Hall of Famer. He is not going to make the Hall of Fame, or he's not going to deserve the Hall of Fame. And if he didn't have the reputation he put up early in his career, he would not be on the roster right now. I think, like, if you ask me who's a better DH, DJ LeMahieu or Giancarlo Stanton, like, the answer is Stan, but it's not clear. Like, if DJ LeMahieu is healthy, he might be a better player, and that's not saying much. Like, LeMahieu is not very good. If you didn't have Giancarlo Stanton, you could have options for this roster. Mm-hmm. You could do fun things on the roster that you just can't do because you have such an awful player who for years has just been saddling this roster with inflexibility. And he's owed a lot of money. They're not going to cut him after his playoff performance. Like, I don't think I'm not even sure it's a good idea to cut him after he was just so good at that point in time. But if clearly he's not worth money, right? Like I don't think any team would take $10 million of his contract at this point. So look, if he hits 216 with a 438 slug, I don't even think even like the most rosy Yankees could justify him on this roster. If he's not slugging 470, he is not worth being on a major league roster.
And with those harsh words, that brings us to the end of our program. Just a quick reminder, my dear friends, this program is brought to you by Artemisia Publishing, who will be publishing my new Yankees book, which will be coming out. We changed the release date. Instead of putting it out in the late fall, early winter of 2025, we're going to save it for the spring when baseball comes back, 2026. More on that in the future. You're going to love this book. It's phenomenal. Artemisia Publishing. Check out them with their great list of phenomenal titles at apbooks.net. EJ, as always, a great pleasure. Have a wonderful week, and maybe when we talk next week, Alex Bregman or Nolan Arenado or somebody is
something will happen. Hopefully, something happens.
Let's go.
Aaron Judge buys a house in Miami. I don't care. Give me some news. Give me some Yankees news.
Need some Yankee news. All right, EJ.
To do. Yeah.
Have a great day. We made an hour. We didn't think we were going to go that long, but we did. So beautiful. Thank you so much. Have a great night.